So we will start off with the history of Governor Generals and Viceroys. So up to 1857, if you see, you will see Governor Generals, right? And after 1857, you will see Viceroys and Governor General, and both will be there, right? Viceroys and Governor Generals will be there. So what is the difference between Viceroy and Governor General and all? I'll discuss when it comes to that time. Okay. So we'll start with Governor Generals, then we'll discuss about Viceroys also. Okay. So when we start with Governor General, so we need to discuss from 1773 onwards, right? Because a post of Governor Generals was established in 1773 through Regulating Act, right? So first, quickly we'll discuss about Regulating Act. Then I'll discuss about the provision, because through this act only the Governor General post was created. Then the history of Governor General is starting. So what I'll do is I'll discuss about Regulating Act of 1773. In fact, we will discuss about all the acts. But after this, what we are going to do is we will take up one Governor General each, and we'll see that time period and what all important events happened during that time. So when we discuss about 1784 Pitt's India Act, we will discuss under Warren Hastings. So we'll take out Warren Hastings and we'll see his time period. So what all events happened during Warren Hastings, we'll discuss together. In that, we'll discuss about Pitt's India Act. Okay, but this we are discussing separately. The reason is because through 1773 Regulating Act only the post of Governor General is created, right? So only after that the Governor Generals we can start studying, right? So 1784 you will see Pitt's India Act, then you will see 1813 Charter Act. So this I will discuss under that particular Governor General. Then you will see 1833 Charter Act. This I will discuss under that particular Governor General, that is Lord William Bentinck, right? Then you will see 1857 Government of India Act, etc., etc., etc. So that all those things we'll discuss under that particular Governor General or Viceroy or during that time period. Okay, so anything and everything is going to be covered in history in terms of Governor General. So we'll start with Governor General. We'll take up the time period. We'll cover all the events which has happened. So till 1947 we will cover in that way. So let's start off with the Regulating Act of 1773. Now what is this act for? As its name indicates, it is basically to regulate. Now the question is, who is going to regulate whom, right? The East India Company, which is going to be regulated by the British Parliament. Okay, so East India Company is going to be regulated. That's why the act is passed. And who passed it is the British Parliament. So British Parliament is going to regulate the affairs of East India Company in India. Now you know everything related to East India Company by now. They came to India, they established, we have discussed about Battle of Plassey and everything, right? So now this Regulating Act of 1773 is basically to regulate the East India Company, and by whom? British Parliament. Now how they are going to regulate and all, we'll see, right? So we'll see the provisions of this act. The first and most important provision, if you see, the Governor of Bengal. Till then, if you have some knowledge about history, you know Bengal, Bombay and Madras were the three important presidencies at that time. So in Bengal, in Bombay and in Madras, they had governors, right? But now what they have done in this is, Governor of Bengal became Governor General of Bengal. Okay, so the first thing that you need to keep in mind is Governor of Bengal became Governor General of Bengal. So Governor of Bombay remain as Governor of Bombay, it is there. Governor of Madras is there as Governor of Madras. There is no change in that. So now you may think that when this person made Governor General, when the word Governor General is there, you may think that this person is now superior over the other two. So that is not actually correct. There is a superiority in some cases, but otherwise all the three are functioning independent. Okay, so it's like this. You have Governor of Bombay, you have Governor of Bengal, you have Governor of Madras, right? Now this person became Governor General of Bengal. This doesn't mean that he is a superior now. He is controlling others, right? But you will see in 1833, when we discuss about the Charter Act of 1833, Governor General of Bengal became Governor General of India. Then that person is superior over the other governors. But here, you cannot say this person is superior or their rights are reduced. Nothing like that. So if you need to understand what is the relative superiority and inferiority in this case, it is like in external matters only. When it comes to the internal matters of Bombay, this Governor General of Bengal have no say, right? When it comes to the internal matters of Madras, Governor General of Bombay have no say. It is the Governor of Bombay and Governor of Madras will take the decision with respect to Madras and Bombay. And the internal matters of Bengal, Governor General of Bengal. But when it comes to external matters means what? When it comes to a war treaty or a peace treaty or some agreements like that, then if there is a difference of opinion between these two, Governor of Bombay and Governor General of Bengal, if there is a difference of opinion, then this person will have the final say. So the point which I need to tell you is, in case of internal matters, the complete control is with the respective governors, okay? But when it comes to external matters, if there is a difference of opinion, then the Governor General of Bengal will have the final say. And this has resulted in a lot of difficult scenarios in the past. See, if you see, after the 4th Anglo-Maratha War, Governor of Bombay wanted to sign a treaty with Marathas, and in fact, he signed the treaty. But what happened is, Governor General of Bengal was not interested with the treaty, so he came to Bombay, he annulled the treaty. Then what happened is, Governor of Bombay signed the treaty again. Again, Governor General of Bengal, Warren Hastings at that time, came and annulled the treaty. So finally, obviously, the Governor General of Bengal will have the final say, because he is the final authority when it comes to external matters. So the point which I want to tell you is, the moment you see this word Governor General, that doesn't mean that he is superior over others. He is superior only in case of external affairs, external matters. When it comes to internal matters of Bombay, it is Governor of Bombay. When it comes to internal matters of Madras, it is Governor of Madras. When it comes to internal matters of Bengal, it is Governor General of Bengal. Okay, so that is the first point. So what we have seen is Regulating Act of 1773. As its name indicates, it is basically to regulate East India Company, and who is going to regulate? British Parliament. So the first thing that we saw is Governor of Bengal became Governor General of Bengal. Now, this Governor General of Bengal, along with the council, and the council comprised of 4 other members, so total 5 members. So the Governor General in council is created, right? So Governor General and 4 councillors were created. And how the control is there? The control is basically through these 4 council members, right? The Governor General of Bengal is going to be controlled by these 4 members. So now, if you need to know the appointment of these 2 categories, right? Governor General of Bengal is actually the head of the company, right? So East India Company is there. So Governor General is the head of the company. So Governor General is appointed by the company only. So Governor General is appointed by the East India Company, because it is the head of the company. The chairman of the company is appointed by the company. But the Regulating Act, as its name indicates, it is basically to regulate. So if you need to regulate, if you are regulating through these 4 members, then these 4 members must not be appointed by East India Company. This is appointed by the British Parliament. So that's how they are going to regulate the Governor General and the company, right? So these 4 members were appointed by the Parliament, and Governor General is appointed by the company, and the decisions are taken on the basis of majority. So if you need to implement any of the decision, you need a 3 out of 5 majority. So Governor General alone cannot take any decision, and he cannot implement any of his decision if you are not getting the support of minimum 2 from here. So you need the support of 2 people. And what happened is, always Warren Hastings faced a problem with these 4 members. 3 out of these 4 gentlemen is always in quarrel with Warren Hastings, and he was not able to implement any of his decision. So one of the worst period, one of the bad period in history is Warren Hastings period, because he was not able to implement any of his decision because of the clash between these 4 members. They were not interested with Warren Hastings. They were not ready to cooperate with Warren Hastings. And interestingly, the reason that they are saying is, when they came from England after appointed by the British Parliament, and when they reached India, they are not welcomed properly by the Governor General. That is the reason. And after that, they are always against Warren Hastings. Whatever Warren Hastings decision is coming, they will always veto against it. Okay, but and he will not be able to get the majority, so he is not able to implement any of his decision. So that's the reason why Warren Hastings period in history is also known as trial and error period. I'll come to that when we start up with Warren Hastings. We'll discuss in detail why it is called as a trial and error period, because that in itself is a question. Okay, now the questions here possible is, who is the first Governor General? I already told, right? Warren Hastings. Warren Hastings is the first Governor General of Bengal. Then the next question which can be asked is, since these 4 were appointed for the first time, who are the members, right? So you need to know the members also. These are nothing but Richard Barwell, first member. Second, Philip Francis. Then George Monson and John Clavering. Okay. Now these are the 4 members in the council. Since these are the first 4 members, you need to remember the name, right? Now they can ask you question, UPSC will ask you question, which among the following were the members of the first executive committee or the first council or whatever word they put in, right? So they will give you this 1, 2, 3 and 4. Instead of John Clavering, they will give you like something like John Shore. Okay, and your options will be 1, 2, 3, 1, 3, 4, 1 and 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you need to pick option, right? Generally what will happen is John Shore is a very famous person, and he is and we are going to discuss about John Shore in detail later when it comes to permanent settlement along with Cornwallis. Okay, Cornwallis is the very next Governor General after Warren Hastings. So the problem is you will always think that John Shore might be there. Okay, so you may try to pick up any option which is coming with 4, so directly you will eliminate this. This is what actually happening. Otherwise you should know that 4 members are this correctly. There is no other way you can mark this answer. Richard Barwell, Philip Francis, George Monson and John Clavering, not John Shore. Then you will get the correct answer. Okay, so answer for this question is 1, 2, 3 and not 1, 2, 3, 4, because it is not John Shore, it is John Clavering. So these are the first 4 members, right? What is the problem with this provision? So what is the first provision? Governor of Bengal became Governor General of Bengal. Okay, now Governor General of Bengal along with 4 members, and within that Governor General of Bengal was appointed by the East India Company and the 4 members were appointed by the Parliament. And through this 4 members, company controlled the Governor General and in turn East India Company. How? Because the decisions will be taken on the basis of majority. So you need 3/5 support. That means Governor General alone cannot take any decision. He needs the support of minimum 2 people to get this 3/5. But the problem of this act, okay, the problem of this act was 3 out of 4 members were always against Warren Hastings. So Warren Hastings could not implement any of his decision. And that problem was solved later in 1784 through Pitt's India Act. How the problem was solved and what are the provisions of Pitt's India Act, etc. we'll discuss under Warren Hastings after some time. Okay, so I hope all of you understood the first provision. Now the second one, if you see, a Supreme Court has to be established. Supreme Court was established in 1774 at Calcutta. Okay, so one point which you need to keep in mind is the provision of establishment of Supreme Court was there in 1773 Regulating Act, but the court was established in 1774. That you need to keep in mind. Okay, 1773 and 1774. Now you should not have any confusion with the present day Supreme Court and this Supreme Court. The present day Supreme Court, we will discuss in detail when it comes to 1935 Government of India Act. Okay, but just understand this Supreme Court is different to the present day Supreme Court. This Supreme Court is basically established for the trial of Europeans, because when they came to India, right, Indian law and English law are totally different, and they consider Indian laws are traditional, orthodox and uncivilized, etc. So they wanted their own law for their cases, not Indian laws, right? So this Supreme Court is for the trial of Europeans case. So this Supreme Court was established only for the trial of Europeans, and the cases were tried under their law, not Indian law. Okay, so the questions will be, the Supreme Court established in 1774 in Calcutta, and the first Chief Justice was Elijah Impey. So the 2 provisions, again quick recap. What was the first one? Governor of Bengal became Governor General of Bengal, and always keep in mind he is not superior. The relative superiority is only in case of external matters, and as its name indicates, this is to regulate the company and the Governor General. How you are regulating? You are adding 4 members, right, into the council, and the decisions will be taken on the basis of majority. That means you need the support of like 3 out of 5. That means if the Governor General want to implement any decision, he needs the support of 2 people, right? Now, the Governor General was Warren Hastings, and the 4 members you have seen: Richard Barwell, Philip Francis, John Clavering and George Monson, right? So these are the 4 members. Always keep in mind, since these are the first 4, you need to remember. Otherwise, there are many members are coming. It's not that important for you, right? Now, the Governor General is appointed by the company. These 4 members were appointed by the British Parliament. And we have seen the problem with this, because these 3 out of these 4 members were always against Warren Hastings, so he could not implement any decision. Second point that we have seen is the Supreme Court has to be established, and we have seen in 1774 the court was established at Calcutta, and the first Chief Justice was Elijah Impey. Okay, now once you understood this, now let's move on to Warren Hastings period. Okay, now we'll discuss Warren Hastings in detail. What all things happened under him, what are the revenue settlements, what are the problems he faced, what are the changes that he tried to brought in, and what are the problems, etc. We will discuss in detail. Okay, now we will start off with Warren Hastings, right? The first Governor General of Bengal, right? So just now we have seen that Governor of Bengal became Governor General of Bengal, and the first Governor General of Bengal was Warren Hastings. And now what we are going to do is we'll discuss each Governor General in that chronology, and we'll try to cover all important events which happened during that particular Governor General, right? So now we'll start with Warren Hastings, then we'll move on to Lord Cornwallis, then John Shore, Lord Wellesley, etc., etc. We'll cover, and up to Dalhousie and Canning will cover. Then after that you can see both Viceroys and Governor Generals are coming. I tell you what is the difference between these two and why both exist simultaneously, right? So all these things will be covered in that chronology itself. So let's start off with Warren Hastings. Now what is this time period? 1773 to 1785. From prelims point of view, the chances of getting questions from Warren Hastings is less, or one or two questions can be asked, but I'll start off with a very important mains question from Warren Hastings. That is, see, Warren Hastings period in history is known as trial and error period. So now UPSC can ask you a direct question. Warren Hastings period in history is known as trial and error period. Discuss one question, or they can ask you comment or critically analyze. So you need to understand the meaning of each word. Discuss and critically analyze is different, right? So we need to critically analyze the situation if it is critically analyzed question. If it is discuss or comment, it is slightly more easier. So for a critical analysis question, you need to have much more in-depth knowledge, right? You need to write the pros and cons, and you need to conclude also. So let's start off with this topic itself. Why Warren Hastings period in history is understood as trial and error period? How are you going to answer this question? This is how we are going to start with, right? So before answering this question, you need to understand what kind of India was Warren Hastings was controlling at that time. So Bengal at that time, if you see, Bengal was such a huge territory. It comprised of Bengal and Bihar and Orissa, right? So it's such a huge territory. Now if you compare it with England, right? Warren Hastings is coming from England. England is a very small country. Like even if you compare with these three states now, England is very small, right? Comparatively, right? So the person who's coming from a very small country is now going to administer the huge area. And other thing which you need to understand, or which you need to keep in mind, is he don't have any administrative experience. He's a business person, right? He's the chairman of the East India Company, and when the post of Governor General of Bengal was created, it has to be appointed by East India Company, so automatically it will be the head of the company, which is going to be the Governor General of Bengal. So now he is going to administer the area, right? Which is the area, if you see, it's a huge in area, even greater than England itself, right? So he faced a lot of problems. Firstly, he don't have any experience in administration. He's a business person. Secondly, if you see, there is always an ego clash between the Queen and Warren Hastings. That's the reason why this regulating act was passed, as well as if you see the 4 members who came through the regulating act was always controlling Warren Hastings and always against Warren Hastings, and these 4 members were always against Warren Hastings, and they were not supporting any of the decisions which is made by Warren Hastings. So he faced a lot of problem, right? What is the reason? If you see, the Queen of England is having a very limited area, this much only, and a businessman, an owner of a private company from that country is controlling this much area, means okay, there will be some problem, right? So all these were some of the problems that Warren Hastings faced at that time. So you can see Warren Hastings period as trial and error period because of many reasons. Firstly, he don't have any administrative experience. First of all, he is a business person, so he tried to do a lot of things to administer this big huge area, and most of them were failures. So majority is different revenue settlements. We'll see what are the different revenue settlements that he implemented and why it was a failure. We'll see, right? Then other things which we have already discussed is the 4 council members, they were not cooperating with Warren Hastings. So there also he faced problem. He could not implement any of his decision. So all these are the reason why it is actually understood as trial and error period. Now why it is trial and error period? There are a lot of trials and a lot of errors. We'll see what are they, right? Now if you see the 2 most important problem that he faced, or rather any ruler or any administrator then and now, any time in the history, if you see, the two important problem will face in India, or any administrator, if they want to administer, the two things which has to be taken care is the revenue. You should get revenue to administer, as well as a proper legal system should be there, right? Now when Warren Hastings came to India, he did not have much idea about the revenue collection setup in India, right? Earlier we had different setups like Lagan and all, which you might have read or seen during Mughal time. So Mughals had their own system of revenue collection, but when Britishers came, they had no idea. Because in Europe and all, if you see, majority of the revenue is not coming from agriculture, but in India most of the revenue is coming from agriculture. Their industries, manufacturing, etc. is there, right? So here mostly the revenue is coming from agriculture, which is known as Lagan, and Mughals had their own system, but Britishers had no idea, or Warren Hastings had no idea about the system, right? And they faced a lot of problem in revenue collection, like how to collect revenue, like when to collect revenue. When means is it after the cultivation or before the sowing, right? After the cultivation, if your cultivation is this much, based on that you can get some amount, right? Or a percentage you can ask. Or before sowing means you see the quality of the soil and the area and all, and you can fix a revenue before the sowing also, right? So how to collect revenue, when to collect revenue, from whom to collect revenue, that is another thing. If you see in India, there is a typical situation that the persons who is undertaking the cultivation may not be the original owner of the land. The original owner, maybe the landlords, big landlords, they may not undertake any cultivation. So the actual cultivators are different. You may call it as sharecroppers, peasants, okay, tenants or whatever it is, right? So whether the land revenue should be collected from the landowners or from the tenants or the peasants or the sharecroppers, that is another, from whom it has to be collected. Other problem that he faced is how much to be collected as revenue, like 20%, 30%, 40%, 50% or 90%, right? So that is another problem they faced. Another important problem in revenue collection is who will collect revenue. Is it the British person or a landlord or the zamindar? Okay, you can see different situations, and you can see different settlements. The zamindari settlement where the zamindar is collecting, Riotwari settlement where a Riot or a British official is collecting the revenue, and Mahalwari settlement where the Panchayat is collecting revenue. So who will collect revenue is another problem. So all these were the main problem that they faced from revenue side. Basically they had no idea about the revenue collection in India, right? What is the system followed, and that was one of the most important problem that Warren Hastings faced. Now apart from revenue, if you look into the legal side, see, the Indian legal system and European legal system is totally different. That we have already saw, and we have already discussed when we had a discussion about the Regulating Act. I told you a Supreme Court was established, and the objective of that Supreme Court is for the trial of Europeans, because Indian laws and European laws are different. But here, within Indian laws itself, there are differences, right? Between different religion, between different caste and communities and all, the laws are different. So predominantly there are two types of cases, right? You have on one side criminal cases, and you have civil cases. Now criminal cases, the laws are more or less the same, but there will be some regional variation. Apart from that, the laws are same, which was set by the Mughals. It is Islamic law, or it was partly Islamic and partly local. It was set by Mughals. Almost same for Hindus and Muslims. But when it comes to civil laws, it is different, right? Civil law means what? The laws related to marriage, adoption, property, etc., right? This is what civil laws. Now in civil laws, they followed their respective religions. So Hindus basically followed Manusmriti and Muslims followed Quran, right? Quran and Hadith and all, right? So this is why the civil laws are different. For example, if you take property law, in case of Hindus, if you see, what is written in Manusmriti is the property will be passed on to son from father, right? So father to son. Now the problem is, it is not specified, it is not mentioned which son is going to get how much, right? Elder son or the younger son or any son, how much is distributed to the son, or which son will get how much and all, is not mentioned, right? Other problem that you can see here in this law is nothing is given to daughter, except something which is given during the time of marriage in the form of dowry or sridan, right? Apart from that, there is nothing given to daughter. But when it comes to Islam, everything is clearly mentioned in Quran, right? Son will get this much, daughter will get this much, elder son will get this much, younger son will get this much, right? Everybody's share is clearly mentioned in Quran. So if you have a family with a greater strength, you will get more. If you have a family with lesser strength, you will get less. So everything on the basis of percentage and everything is clearly mentioned in Quran, right? So the father had not much flexibility of giving the property to the children, it is mentioned as, especially if the property is of ancestors' property, if the father got it from his father, then father had no role, no right to write his will. But if it is his own property, he had some limited right to write his will, right? So that is the case. If it is an ancestor's property, father had no right to write his will. But if it is his own property, he have the right to do that, okay? So everything is mentioned in Quran. So that is the difference between these two in case of property law. When it comes to marriage, you can see the same situation, right? In case of marriage, in Hindus it is considered as sacrosanct, something which is very religious. Once you are married, it's like you are married forever, right? There is no concept of divorce. Now divorce was incorporated after 1956 only, right? All these things we know. But the point is, marriage is considered as sacrosanct among Hindus, but among Muslims, marriage is considered as it's a social contract. It's a contract, right? So this is a contract between two people. So if it is a contract, there is a provision that you can break the contract if the life is not satisfactory, right? So you can see the possibility of divorce in Islam, but divorce is not allowed in Hindu system, right? So divorce, you know that it is triple talaq. So triple talaq was allowed in Islam. That means a male can seek divorce from female if he is not satisfied with that lady, right? So through this triple talaq, a male can seek divorce. The opposite of triple talaq is known as khul, but very few people know about this. Khul is the reverse of triple talaq, right? A female can seek divorce from the male, from her husband, if she is not satisfied, if she is not interested, or if she don't want to continue the relation. So there is a difference in marriage laws of Muslims and Hindus, right? Now if you see adoption related laws, adoption is not considered valid among Muslims, but it is accepted in Hindus, right? So if you see doctrine of lapse, you will be studying about doctrine of lapse when we discuss about Dalhousie. He is the person who implemented doctrine of lapse. There I will discuss in detail about doctrine of lapse and what are the states which were annexed under this doctrine of lapse. So what is doctrine of lapse? In one sentence, if a king did not have a direct heir, if a king did not have a direct son or heir, that state will be annexed under British territory, and the adopted son will not be allowed to nominate as the successor, okay? The adopted son is not allowed to be the next successor. The king is not allowed to nominate the adopted son as the successor, right? So that was doctrine of lapse. So if you see most of the states which were annexed under doctrine of lapse, all were Hindu states, whether Nagpur, Jhansi, Satara, all were Hindu states. So annexation of Awadh is different, right? We'll discuss about that. 1856 annexation of Awadh we'll discuss, because this is one of the most important reason for 1857 revolt. We'll discuss how annexation of Awadh is also connected to 1857 revolt when we discuss about 1857 revolt, okay? So all those states which were annexed under doctrine of lapse, if you see, were Hindu states. The reason is adoption was valid among Hindus only. So the point which I want to tell you is the civil laws were different for Hindus and Muslims. So now if Britishers want to administer India, or if Britishers want to have their control in India, they have to have a control over the legal system as well as the revenue. So the only way is you need to study, or you need to know about this legal system, right? So you should know about this system. So they tried to study the legal system as well as revenue system in India, and that's how a new branch of knowledge which was emerged during that time, which is known as Indology. Indology literally means study of India. And how they are going to study India? Through archaeological excavation, all the religious textbooks or the writings of kings, travelogues, etc., etc. So they are going to read those old religious texts, etc., and they are going to convert into English. So Sanskrit to English conversions you can see a lot during this time. So Indology is nothing but study of India. So basically the emergence of Indology is related to British administration in India, because if they want to administer, they need to know India. If they need to know India, they have to read the Sanskrit texts and all where everything is described, and they have to convert into English, and they have to learn. The first such effort, or the first such translation, was happened in 1776 when Manusmriti was translated to Jendu Code, or Code of Jendu Laws, right? So Manusmriti was translated to Jendu Code. So this was the first such effort in Indology. So this can be asked as a prelims question. So 1776 is important for this purpose. Manusmriti was translated to Jendu Laws, Code of Jendu Code, or Jendu Code is what? Which among the following relate to Jendu Code? Okay, so conversion or translation of Manusmriti, the year is 1776. Now 1781, a madrasa was established at Calcutta, and which is known as Calcutta Madrasa. So this is for understanding the Islamic laws, right? Now in 1784, another important event, Asiatic Society of Bengal was established. Asiatic Society of Bengal was established by William John. Okay, so these are the three facts which you need to remember from Indology or this particular topic. So Jendu Code in 1776, Calcutta Madrasa in 1781, Asiatic Society of Bengal by William John in 1784. Jendu Code is nothing but Manusmriti. This is for this Calcutta Madrasa for Islamic education. Now Asiatic Society of Bengal, the objective was basically to promote Oriental studies. Oriental studies means study of East. In particular, it is study of India, right? So established by William John. Where it is established? It is established again at Calcutta, okay? Asiatic Society of Bengal at Calcutta by William John to promote Oriental studies. So three important points: 1776 Jendu Code, 1781 Calcutta Madrasa, 1784 Asiatic Society of Bengal, okay, related to Indology. Now, whatever it is, now the Britishers started studying India, right? So different scholars came, they started studying India. Now, if you look into, there are two types of scholars, right? One is British administrators. Their purpose is they need to know India for the purpose of administration. Another is British scholars, right? Freelance scholars, the academicians and all. Their purpose, they want to know India because they are interested in the beautiful history of India, right? So they want to know the history of India. Now, if you see here, their understanding is different because what the British administrators did is, it was biased against India, and their objective is basically to justify British rule in India. So what they did is they maligned India completely. They highlighted every negative aspect of India. They said that India is very traditional and orthodox and the laws are uncivilized. So they highlighted the uncivilized nature of India, and they made it in such a way that their role in India is basically to civilize India. So India is uncivilized and Britishers are going to make India civilized, or they are going to change India from traditionalism to modernism. And this is what the so-called self-professed notion of white man's burden, right? White man's burden. What is that? So they are saying that India is traditional, India is orthodox. They want to change India from traditionalism to modernism, uncivilized to civilized society. But on the other hand, if you see the British scholars who came to study India, they have seen India and Indian history with a great honor and appreciation. And they highlighted the very good aspects of India, right? So it was not biased against English. So they highlighted the real picture of India. And they have seen with great appreciation. They have seen the history of India with great pride and appreciation. So this was against India. This was like for India. But whatever it is a British administrators and British scholars. So Britishers came to India and they taught us who were we, what were we, etc., right? Our history and everything was studied by the British, and they told us who we were, right? So on one side British administrators, on the other side British scholars. British administrators, they tried to justify their rule in India. British scholars, they appreciated Indian culture and they have seen it with a great pride and appreciation. Okay, now we will come back to our discussion. We were actually talking about trial and error, right? Okay, so we were actually answering this question, why Warren Hastings period in history is known as trial and error period, right? So now you might have got some idea about your introduction, right? So you can write in your introduction about the situations, right? The circumstances. So now we have already discussed the situations there. So there are some problem with legal system, there are some problem with revenue system, right? Then we have seen he did not have much experience in administration. He is a business person. Now he is administering such a huge territory which comprises of Bengal, Bihar and Orissa, etc. So whoever is coming in this situation is bound to make mistake, right? Yes or no? So this is how, if you want to justify Warren Hastings, you can justify Warren Hastings also, not a problem, right? So whoever is coming to this scenario is actually bound to make a mistake. And that's what happened with Warren Hastings also, right? So let's see some of the experiments that he did in revenue collection. So he tried some revenue settlement, but were failures. We'll discuss what he did and why it was a failure. And after that, the solution for all this revenue settlement came in 1793 through the permanent settlement, which was implemented by Lord Cornwallis along with John Shaw. So we'll come to that. Before permanent settlement, there were two types of settlement. So that is what we need to see, and that happened under Warren Hastings. It was a failure. So you can write this also in your answer, why it is known as trial and error period. So he tried something that was a failure. Okay, so what is the experiment he did in revenue collection? So what happened is, from 1772 to 77, to collect revenue, this is known as 5-year settlement. So the settlement is for 5 years. Okay, so the Governor General allowed Zamindar to collect revenue. Okay, so Zamindar is collecting revenue. And how you appoint the Zamindar? It's like this. If you are the collector, it's like this. They will conduct an auction process, so there will be advertisement and all, right? Or we are going to select the Zamindars or something like that, there will be advertisement. So all those aspiring Zamindars will come for the auction, and the person who caught the maximum amount will get the Zamindariship, right? So the person who caught the maximum amount to the state will get the Zamindariship, and that person can collect anything from the peasant or the sharecropper, right? Zamindar is there, he will collect revenue from whom? From the peasant, and he will give it to the British government, right? Or the East India Company, so he'll give it to the company. So the revenue is collected from the peasant by the Zamindar and will give it to this. How the Zamindar is selected? Through a bidding process, auction process. And how does it happen? Just like normal, the person who caught the maximum amount will get the Zamindariship. Now what is the problem here? And I told you this is for 5 years, right? And this is the major problem, because in most of the time the Zamindars will not comply to the conditions. They will not be able to pay the amount that they quoted or the amount that they promised. But still the contract is for 5 years. So the British or the East India Company, they are not able to evict or change the Zamindar since the contract is for 5 years. So from 72 to 77, the same Zamindar continued despite he is not paying the promised amount, right? Now how is this actually happening? See, when the auction is there, these people desperately want to become Zamindars. Now there are many reasons for that. See, we will study about police reforms in 1793. But before that, the power of policing was with the Zamindars. So Zamindars had some power of policing. So people desperately want to become Zamindars. So they will quote the maximum amount during the time of bidding. They don't want to lose that chance, right? So let's suppose you can collect like 1 lakh rupee from a particular area. What he will do is he will promise, let's say, 5 lakh. And he himself is very clear that he is not able to realize it. The maximum which is possible is 1 lakh, but he will make a promise of 5 lakh. So he don't want to lose the Zamindariship, and that's why he's doing this, right? So whatever he try, he know that he will get only 1 lakh. So what will happen in the end is, he may be able to collect this 1 lakh, that is the maximum amount which is possible, right? So he may be able to collect or may not be able to, maybe 80,000. So what he will do is, in the first 1 year, he will not pay anything. Second year also, he don't want to. Third year, because the contract is for 5 years, right? So, in the end of 5 year or towards the end, let's imagine he collected 1 lakh. Okay. Now, what he promised is 5 lakh. So, if he is not paying 5 lakh, he will lose his Zamindariship. Now, whatever is there in his hand is 1 lakh, right? So, if you pay this 1 lakh, then also you'll lose the Zamindariship. If you don't pay anything, then also you lose the Zamindariship, right? Or if you pay 10,000, then also you lose the Zamindariship. What is going to happen maximum? You will lose the Zamindariship. So, even if he collected 1 lakh, he will not pay that 1 lakh. He may not pay, or he may pay some small amount, right? But the problem here is with the government. Government is expecting this 5 lakhs, and their policies and everything will be planned on the basis of it. And finally what they are getting this maybe 10,000. Even though Zamindar collected this much. So who is benefiting here? Zamindar is getting rest of the amount. Neither the government is benefiting nor the peasant is benefiting. Peasant is paying anyway. Peasant is exploited by the Zamindar. Neither the government is getting nor the peasant is getting any benefit, right? So only Zamindar is getting benefited from this, because he is charging a huge amount from the peasant and he is paying very less to the government. And why government is in trouble is because government cannot remove him before 5 years, because it's a contract for 5 years, right? So that is the reason why this settlement was a failure. Okay, so this is 5-year settlement. So in 1777 what happened is, Warren Hastings changed it to 5 year to 1 year. That means now the other thing is same, right? The other thing is same. That means there will be auction. The person who caught the maximum amount will get the Zamindariship, and he can collect money from the peasant. Everything else remains the same, except this 5 year is changed to 1 year. That means if you are not able to pay in 1 year, you will be changed, and the new auction will be conducted. New person will come. Now you don't have that much longer tenure, right? You cannot keep it for 5 years. You can maximum keep it for 1 year. So here also the same thing will happen, because the root cause or the root problem is not solved, right? This auction process is a problem, because during the time of auction, the zamindars, those people were very much desperate to become zamindars, right? So now imagine, in the previous case I told you 5 year maximum you can collect is maybe 1 lakh. Now if it is 1 year, maximum you can collect is like 20,000. But when the time of bidding, they will quote like 1 lakh. Right? When they quote 1 lakh, even these people also know that they can get only 20,000. So after the end of 1 year, you are collected 20,000. Now, if you are not paying 1 lakh, you lose the zamindariship. Even if you pay whatever you collected, still you lose the zamindariship, right? So if you pay 1 rupee, then also you will lose zamindariship. If you pay whatever you collected, let's suppose 20,000, then also you lose zamindariship. So which is better? Without paying anything, you lose the zamindariship. Enjoy it for 1 year and make whatever you want for the next rest of the year, right? And that's what actually happened. That's why, see, in these two settlements, 72 to 77 and 77 onwards, the root cause is actually the auction process or the bidding process. During the time of bidding, they promise the maximum amount or an unrealistic amount, and they will not be able to pay it back to the government. But the government will make policies and plans on the basis of this, right? Because government is expecting that amount, but government is not able to get it. So here, this revenue settlement was a problem for peasants, obviously, because the peasants are exploited, as well as for East India Company, because they are not able to get whatever is promised by the zamindar. And who is getting the advantage? This person is getting the advantage. Now, this is changed later by Cornwallis through permanent settlement. We'll discuss that. So I hope you got some content to write your answer for trial and error period, right? So if it is a critically analyzed question, okay, see, generally what is the pattern of writing this answer critically analyzed? You will first write an introduction. So introduction is nothing but the context, right? The circumstances in which Warren Hastings is controlling. So that is general, right? You will write the context, right? So then you will write the problems and all he faced, right? So then you can write the negative sides, what all things he implemented, and you can write why it is a failure, right? And you can conclude. You can either support or you can give your own opinion, right? So this is how you'll write this answer. So mostly you can get a critically analyzed question from this. Now one thing you can be very sure is, instead of Warren Hastings, whoever is coming in that time in 1773 is bound to make these mistakes. Because see, if you see Bengal, Bihar and Orissa, it's if this is England, this is Bengal, this is Bihar and this is Orissa, right? So such a huge territory. And if you see Bengal, that Bengal comprised of present day Bangladesh also. So it's such a huge territory. In this, Jharkhand is there, Chhattisgarh is there, all the states are there now. Okay, you cannot even imagine the size of this, right? So it's such a huge territory. More than that, see, people here are speaking the same language, English, right? But here if you see Bengali and Hindi, Odia, etc. So different types of people speaking different types of language, right? Now here if you see a same religion, but here if you see there is a Hindu population and Muslim population, right? So there is a division on the basis of religion, and within religion there are divisions on the basis of caste. Within Hinduism you can see Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. So there is a division on the basis of caste. Now within Brahmins also there are divisions. Okay, so now in Muslims also you can see caste in India as an impact of Hinduism, Ashraf, Ajlaf and Arzal, etc. Okay, so the point which I want to tell you is, they are coming from this country, small country, everybody is talking the same language, same religion, same culture, but when it comes to this area, Bengal, Bihar and Orissa, people are different, people speak different language, people are in different religion, people are in different community or different caste, right? And they are divided on many aspects. Multiple divisions are there. So to know about these people itself is a big challenge. So to control these people is another challenge. So that's why anyone is coming and controlling this scenario may face some difficulty in the beginning. And that's what exactly Warren Hastings has also faced. So you can bring all these points in your answer, right? So the points which I have told you, everything you can bring in your answer, right? Also you can talk about the 2 revenue settlements that we have discussed, right? Now, one more fact, interesting fact, it may not come in exam. Warren Hastings is the only Governor General who was tried for a murder case. There was a Bengali trader whose name was Nanda Kumar. He accused Warren Hastings for a corruption case. Okay, and later this person was arrested and hanged in a fabricated case. And in that, death of Nandakumar, wherein Hastings was tried, but the court cleared him due to lack of evidence. Although his name was there, but there was no evidence, and the court cleared him. Okay, so just an interesting fact. Now let's move on to next important aspect, which happened again in Warren Hastings period, Pitt's India Act. It is named after British Prime Minister Pitts. Okay, now we'll see the provisions of this act. Okay, so before that we have just discussed about Regulating Act. Quick recap of it. 1773. This is 1784. Okay, so Regulating Act. Two things that we have discussed is Governor of Bengal became Governor General of Bengal, along with 4 councillors. We know who is this Governor General. We know the 4 council members: Richard Barwell, Philip Francis, John Clavering, and George Monson. Then we have discussed about Supreme Court was established at Calcutta, and this court was established for the trial of Europeans, right? Now we need to see the provisions of Pitt's India Act. Okay, so you need to also know how the problem of Regulating Act is changed through Pitt's India Act. What was the problem in Regulating Act? Because we have already told Governor General of Bengal plus 4 members, the decisions are taken on the basis of majority. That means 3 out of 5 is required, but the Governor General was never able to get the support of 2. If you need to implement any decision, if you need to get this majority, you need the support of 2. But 3 out of 4 gentlemen was always against Warren Hastings. Okay, so how this problem is going to be solved is what we need to discuss now, right? So here there was a change in this, and the change is Governor General of Bengal plus 4 member. This was reduced to 3 member. This 4 member became 3 member, but other things remain the same. Appointment, this Governor General of Bengal was appointed by East India Company. This 3 members were appointed by the British Parliament. There is no change in this because he is the head of the company, and 3 members are actually controlling the Governor General, right? So it is appointed by the Parliament. Through this 3 members only, British Parliament is actually controlling the Governor General and East India Company. So it is appointed by the Parliament. Now decisions are taken on the basis of majority. What does that mean? Here it is total 4. Total 4 means 2 by 4 is equality, right? Majority is 3 by 4. Earlier was 3 by 5. Now which one is easy to get, 3 by 4 or 3 by 5? 3 by 5 is easy to get, right? 3 by 5 is easy to get because out of 5 you need to get 3. Here out of 4 you need to get 3, right? If you are not able to get 3 out of 5, you cannot get 3 out of 4. But we are still saying that the problem is solved, right? How? That is what we are going to see, right? Now how the problem is going to be solved is like this. See, now there is a possibility of equality, just like this. When 4 members are there, 2 and 2, right? In case of an equality, the Governor General is having a veto power, or the final say is with the Governor General. So it is like, you can put it in a different way. Governor General will have 2 votes. Governor General will have 2 votes. So let me exercise that 2 votes first. So Governor General exercise 2 votes, right? Majority means 3 out of 4, right? Now Governor General having 2 votes means you need to get the support of 1 from this 3, right? So now you have 3, you need to get the support of 1 out of 3. That's how this problem is solved. Now 1 you can get in any way. See, now it is reduced like this. If you get the support of at least 1, you can implement any decision. If you are not getting the support of anyone, then obviously you cannot implement your decision. Your decision alone cannot be implemented. If you get minimum 1, then you can implement the decision. It's like this. Now 2:2 means 1 is Governor General and you are getting the support of 1. Other 2 are against. Still you can exercise a veto. So this become 3 and this become 2. You can implement your decision. Not a problem. You got it? Effectively, Governor General have 2 votes. That means Governor General need the support of only 1 person. And that you can get it in any way. That's why I told you the problem is solved. So earlier what was the situation? Earlier you need to get the support of 3 out of 5. That there were no vetoes. There were no vetoes, right? So if Governor General is 1, you need to get the support of 2. Now that is not the situation. Governor General is there, you just need to get the support of 1. Then if you get that support, you can exercise the veto, so it becomes 3. So now the matter is only 1 vote is what you need to get. Then the issue is solved, right? So that's the first point, and that's how the solution for the previous Regulating Act, right? So what is this? Governor General of Bengal plus 4 became 3, and everything else is the same. Appointment is East India Company and appointment here is British Parliament. Decision is taken on the basis of majority. That means 3 out of 4 is required, but Governor General has been given a veto power in case of equality, and based on that provision, Governor General was able to solve most of the problems, because if you get at least 1 support, you can implement decision. If no support means you cannot do it. Now the second point is, a new board in England was created known as Board of Control, to control the affairs of, as its name indicates, it is basically to control. So this board is created to control the affairs of East India Company in India. Okay, so a board of control was established to control the affairs of East India Company in India. So it comprised of 6 members. Okay, so a board of control was established in England with 6 members to control the affairs of East India Company in India. Right, now you can see this board of control will be abolished in 1857 after the 1857 revolt, because then British government is directly taking the control. Right, then there is no need to control East India Company. Right, so this board of control was established to control the affairs of East India Company in India. After 1857, you can see the abolishment of this. Now at that time, who was the president of board of control? Charles Wood. Okay, so anyway, you will be studying about this person in Wood's dispatch. We'll discuss all these things in the coming sessions, but I just connected it. So you will be seeing the abolition of board of control in 1858, right after the revolt, because then British Parliament is directly taking the control over India. There is no need to control East India Company. Now the third provision is, now see, I told you the East India Company is actually appointing the Governor General of Bengal, right? So the company is appointing the Governor General, and the British Parliament is appointing the 3 members. Earlier 4 members, now 3 members, right? Now the third provision is about recall. That means the British Parliament can recall any of its officials, including Governor General. Any of its official is not a problem. That is common sense, because it is appointed by British Parliament. So British Parliament can recall its officials. But including Governor General is a problem, because it is appointed by East India Company. So although the Governor General of Bengal was appointed by East India Company, now through 1784 Pitt's India Act, British Parliament, if they are not interested, they can recall that person. You got it? So the provision of recall, what is that? British Parliament can recall any of its official, including the Governor General, although the Governor General is appointed by the East India Company. So a quick recap, 3 provisions. First is Governor General of Bengal plus 4 member became 3 member. Appointment, this person is appointed by East India Company, these 3 appointed by British Parliament. Decisions are taken on the basis of majority only, but there was a veto provision for Governor General. Second, board of control was established in England with 6 members. Third, there was a provision of recall. Now the British Parliament can recall any of its official, including the Governor General, although the Governor General is appointed by the company. So these are the 3 provisions of Pitt's India Act, which you need to remember. Now Regulating Act, quickly again, what was the first one? Governor General of Bengal plus 4 member, then there was a Supreme Court. Now Governor of Bengal became Governor General of Bengal through Regulating Act of 1773. So these are the points that we have discussed under Warren Hastings. So a quick recap again. So we started with 1773 Regulating Act, right? First point, Governor of Bengal became Governor General of Bengal. Now Governor General of Bengal along with 4 council members. Now decisions are taken on the basis of majority. This appointment is East India Company, this appointment is British Parliament. 3 out of 5 support is required, but he faced a lot of problem because of this. Then a Supreme Court has to be established, and a Supreme Court was established at Calcutta in 1774, and the first Chief Justice was Elijah Impey, right? Now after that we have seen why Warren Hastings period is known as trial and error period. We have discussed the context, we have discussed the circumstances, right? We have discussed the problems he faced in legal system and revenue collection, and we have seen the revenue collection experiments that he made, revenue settlements that he made, and we have also seen why it was a failure. Then we have seen Pitt's India Act of 1784. It was named after the British Prime Minister Pitts. Now we have seen 3 provisions. Governor General of Bengal plus 4 became 3. Appointment is East India Company, and this is appointed by British Parliament, and decisions are taken on the basis of majority, but there was a veto. Second, a board of control was established at England to control the affairs of East India Company in India with 6 members, and this was abolished after 1857 revolt, right? Now there was a provision of recall. That means the British Parliament can recall any of its official, including the Governor General, if they are not satisfied with the person, right?